All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fights. My name is Thinker St. James, and tonight we have a jam-packed show. We are going to be doing some of our predictions for UFC Fight Night, Adesanya versus Imavov, and going over a lot of events that happened last weekend, including BKFC, Karate Combat, PFL, and a little bit of the GFL Draft. And to do all of that with me, as always, my good friend, my co-host, the Ohio player, and a man who is apparently looking for a fight himself, Mr. Chase Parton. How you doing, brother?
We are on the fucking something tonight, on the ball, man. I'm fucking ready to go. This is gonna be a good one. Like you said, jam-packed episode, a lot of different things to cover that I'll probably end up having plenty of rants about. So I'm ready to get this one done. And Rick Allen, I got a different person I'm ready to throw down with. So just hold your horses.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that we got to get it out of the way front and center right off the bat. So out of nowhere, apparently, a little seemingly at least, unbeknownst to myself, and I think most of the Hive members in the Discord, we get a tweet from one Chase Parton a couple of nights ago saying that he is looking for a fight, not only on a pretty large stage if he can get it, but against a somewhat known and I would say slightly controversial member of the MMA content creation community in his own right. So, Chase, why don't you break it down? Let the people know what's going on here.
Listen, there's no breakdown. It's just a real humble and honest offer. My boy Crazy Kev out there, if you are ready to put some credentials to your name, you meet me in the pit around August, and it'll be a birthday present for me for when you wake up to see that I'm celebrating everything that I've ever wanted in karate combat history, because I'm going to be their biggest star, and you don't even know what's coming for you. I just hope that you understand you cannot ignore me any longer. You did it once, and the second time is going to be a lot harder to deny. This one is going to get gritty.
Damn. Well, I mean, so for anybody who doesn't know, Crazy Kev is a dude who is known, I guess, for interviewing fighters. He's got a decent little platform, mostly known on Twitter. And I would say that both myself and Chase have had odd interactions with him in the past because he is just a dude who's somewhat known for having odd interactions. He's kind of a weird guy to begin with. And so I think that when a lot of people saw this call out, it was not only like dope, let's see this fight, but also like, this dude kind of has it coming from some people. Some people want to see this go down. Some people would like to see Kev have some hands laid on him. Is that an accurate assessment, you think?
I think that's pretty accurate. I think Crazy Kev, he is not looking for an opponent, but people are looking for him to have a matchup with somebody. And I might as well be the candidate. I think this is a great opportunity for both of us to get our name in the game, not only on the big stage, but in the pit where I know I can put a master class on. And you think that you got something. I've seen it in the clips, and I know you want to present this skill set that you have to a wide audience, and I know you want people to see you, and I can't wait for them to see us in the pit as long as you are ready to accept this matchup. Tell me that this is not the perfect idea.
I mean, I don't think it could be much more perfect. The only person that doesn't seem to think it's so perfect is Kev himself, as he kind of had an interesting response when the initial call out was made. He's trying to big shot you a little bit over here, give you the big time treatment, saying, "Who the fuck is that guy?" That was a little bit of a disrespect to my boy Chase, trying to play the old roundabout ducking game. What are you thinking on that?
You know, I'm cool with it because this dude has really been trying to steal my moves for some months now. Now he's got a Discord up, and I first told him about the Discord I was starting. I gave him an outreaching hand, and he denied it. He threw me to the side. He wanted to cry in my DMs about other people. How about you cry about my content, brother? I was making it, and you weren't even paying attention. No, you were stealing other people's content and crying people were stealing about yours. Whether that's scandalous or not, no big deal. I'm just ready for this opportunity. I'm telling you, Kevin, you can make us have something great to talk about in the future, and nobody will be able to talk about you ever again. And I know they love to do it. I see it all day on Twitter. Trust me, I keep up. And I'm, like I said, this is humble. I really believe that you are out here doing good things for the community as long as you stay on your high horse, keep your name going. But right now, we got something to prove. And I think the Hive has got some things to prove.
There you go. I mean, I the only other thing that I would say about the situation is don't be scared, homie. You hear what's happening right now. I mean, Chase has some pretty strong words going over here. I think that it's not going to look great if you're out here, just smiling your way through this thing. I think that you need to put up or shut up, Mr. Crazy Kev. Time is now. So you're hearing what's getting put down over here. The Hive is behind Mr. Parton, and you're going to have to drum up your own support because obviously you see what's coming back your direction.
100%. Build a camp, and we'll see who can do it in August, man. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. Mr. Rage Quit throwing it down, saying, sign the contract. That is exactly what we're looking for. Rage Quit knows what's up. So,
100%.
yeah. All right. Well, so leaving off with that, I suppose. I guess we'll leave that one there. Now the ball is in Kev's court once again. So, moving on to the actual meat and potatoes over here. I mean, we got a ton to talk about. So really, I mean, we've got the predictions we're going to do on fight night here for Adesanya versus Imavov. But I think that we want to start off with some of the stuff that went down last weekend, because there were a whole lot of events that went down last weekend. Chase, I did not realize that it was such a major weekend for combat sports without the UFC.
Yeah, that is crazy. You could say that is selective booking by everybody else. They saw the UFC didn't have a week off. They said, fuck it, we got to go. First one of the year. And I respect it. But honestly, somebody had to get the hint that there was too much going on. And unfortunately, the one that we'll talk about the least, and we may get back to it in a minute, but the PFL, I think, was the one that lacked the most because of the timing. And that's maybe because I'm on a time zone where it's just not applicable. But 9 a.m. getting up and watching was just not what I could do that day. So,
yeah, I mean, I guess we could start off with PFL just to get it out of the way, because this for similar reasons, was the one that I saw the least of, I would say. This was PFL's Road to Dubai Champions Series. That was Usman Nurmagomedov versus Paul Hughes in the main event there. The big thing that we had talked about with this one, aside from the actual fight, is that this was the swan song event for the Bellator brand. And it was really bittersweet on top of it, because the fights were somewhat decent from what I understand. As I said, I didn't see everything on there. It was early in the morning. You're trying to get up and do a whole bunch of stuff before the other fights that you're trying to watch later in the evening. And I kind of had it on in the background for a little bit and was in and out of checking it out. So I didn't get to see everything, heard that the fights were pretty good overall. But the one thing that I did notice, and I thought was kind of sad, is that for the last event for Bellator, the only mention of Bellator really on the broadcast was just the Bellator belt that they were holding up behind Hughes and Nurmagomedov to symbolize the victory of this main event. Other than that, they really did not give a fond farewell to the Bellator brand, which is a legacy brand in the combat sports space at this point.
well, honestly, at least you have something, that you have an opinion of, because this whole event, unfortunately, I was blanked on. By the time the main event was over, I actually was like, holy shit, I could have even watched it. I felt really bad that nobody was like kind of keeping me up on on Twitter or anything. Maybe that's part of it, is like nobody that I follow is into the PFL, unfortunately. But I will say also the only thing that came out of this, in my takeaway, was that there was a robbery in the main event, unfortunately. So
Yeah, I have been hearing that. I watched a good amount of it, and again, in and out a little bit. So it's like it was close. It felt like for at least those first three. The last two rounds, I was a little bit preoccupied, so it was hard for me to get like play by play on it. But it was certainly a very strategic back and forth. It felt like it wasn't really like a solid domination on either side from what I was seeing. So if it was a robbery, then I mean, I would probably have to go back and do a point by point breakdown to get a full on assessment. But what's the prevailing thought on as to why that is?
because you can't rob a Nurmagomedov twice. That's probably what I would say. I don't know though, but I
Is
didn't
that
really. Yeah, I mean that's really all you can say when you didn't watch the fight, unfortunately. So
I suppose. All right. Well, then I guess we're gonna have to leave that one there. Sadly, if you want better breakdowns on some of those, then I suppose you're gonna have to find the few people that were up early for these fights and watched all the way through. The only other major point that I had was early on. It was pretty crazy in the second fight here that what is it? Neda got his arm broken, forearm break.
I did
That
see
was
that.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. It was I guess a kick that went to the arm, snapped both bones in the arm, and almost was reminiscent of the Anderson Silva Chris Weidman leg break in how the arm was kind of flopping around in a place that it does not have a bend. So that was something to behold.
Yeah, that was pretty nuts when I saw that. It was pretty, like, when you first see it, you don't notice, and then when you see it in slow motion, it's pretty bad. So hey, shout out to that guy for being able to walk it off. I would have been down to my knees. Oof.
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly. So but yeah, other than that, I mean, the other notable name, at least, and one that I think a lot of people have been keeping an eye on for a while, is Vadim Nemkov. He's I think they're welterweight champion. I want to say is that sounding about right? Am I seeing that correctly here? Um, Either way, he is a dude who has been.
Weight class heavyweight.
uh, Right. Oh, really? Okay, my bad. I thought that maybe I'm mistaking him for a different fighter. But I know that the name has been one that has been touted for a while as a dude who people want to see in the UFC. So uh, if that's the case, he's 19-2, won his fight there. I think that he's making a good case for himself if all things are being considered with the way that PFL operates and all of these fighters who have been upset with their business practices and whatnot. If he's sticking it out past all of that and they're changing their practices now going forward to be more accommodating, get the fighters the fights that they want, all that kind of stuff, then maybe he'll stay over there. But as I said, I don't know too much about him. I don't think I've actually seen him fight, but I know the name. I know it's one that people have been saying it's time for this guy to come over to the UFC. So
Yeah, that might be true, and hopefully he's another guy that can come over and make an impact. Kayla Harrison is somebody that jumps off the head. But the other thing that I will note, that I probably should have noted at first, is that people did say the main event was a great fight. So that is something to note, that it not only, maybe bad decision or not, but the fight itself will be remembered as something that is going to be great. So
yeah, that was, I think, part of like why I was a little bit. I don't know. I had mixed feelings about that because what I did see of it, again, it was very strategic. It was very much like plotting and a lot of high level movement, I would say, but like it didn't feel like like the. I don't know. In the moment, I wasn't feeling like, man, I'm watching greatness right now. You know what I mean? Like, I guess maybe that's just my personal feeling about it. But usually, I'm pretty. I give a good amount of leeway to these fights and try to see the good in them. It didn't seem like an amazing fight. Again, those last two rounds, I was a little bit distracted, so maybe those were where it really turned up or something. But
yeah, it wasn't an unpopular opinion for people to say that, these dudes would not do good, or, would not thrive in the UFC per se. But maybe I'm on the opposite side of social media. Maybe somewhere, some way, there's a scout that's really ready to sign these guys. The scout being Dana, Hunter, Mick, or Shelby.
For
So
sure. Yeah. Well, so unfortunate send off, I would say, for the Bellator brand, but it is what it is. A little bit odd too that this one was on Max, and I actually remembered why that was. So earlier in, well, not this year. I mean, late last year, I guess you should say. Uh, there was an announcement that the Bellator brand had signed a new deal for broadcasting with Max, and that's why this event was on Max. So it is a little bit odd to me that they signed a contract with HBO Max or whatever, just Max, the streaming service for Bellator content, and then dissolve the Bellator brand. So I don't know how that's going to manifest itself when it comes to the PFL, because of course PFL has a broadcast deal with ESPN. So, I guess we're just going to have to see what content ends up on Max versus what's going to stay on ESPN. If anything is going to go to Max, maybe that contract gets renegotiated or the contract gets dissolved. Just an interesting tidbit on top of all of the stuff that's going on with the promotion, because I distinctly remember that I think it was in a Yam episode. I had thrown a line in there about them signing that contract. So it's like, you start something up and then all of a sudden can't come through with the brand that you signed it with. I would think that there's got to be some changes made to that. So something to be aware of.
yeah, like you said, I think it's just unfortunate for us, that being that the time was so early and on a jam-packed weekend full of fights, that it was. I didn't. It wasn't scheduling where I felt like I had to pick one or the other. It was just at a time where I was kind of busy throughout the day, and I didn't want to get right up in the morning and watch the PFL prelims type of deal. So, I mean, I kind of missed out. I can say that, but the fight will live on.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, to keep it in perspective with this, conceivably on Saturday, if you wanted to, you could have watched fights from 9 o'clock in the morning all the way to 2 o'clock in the morning, basically. I mean, with, maybe minor gaps in certain parts, but like between PFL, BKFC, and then the UFC's rebroadcast of UFC 200 on their YouTube channel, there were fights going on throughout the entire day. So it's like, if you really wanted to sit down and marathon fights all day long, you certainly could have. Sometimes it's not conceivable for the average person. So just to keep it in perspective as to why we're not going through point by point on these fights, there's a lot that happened last weekend and why we have a lot to cover today.
Yeah, 100%. I think I'll say first, so I don't get into it later, is I mistakenly was, trying to bounce between the UFC 200 replay and Knucklemania, and I think I took a hit on some analytics because I put the stream as UFC 200 replay. If I would have did the Knucklemania, because that was a fucking hit. Holy shit! We'll start there. I think the fucking
Yeah.
Knucklemania was amazing.
You want to go over to Knucklemania?
Dude,
Let's
I
fucking
want
do
to
it.
do that first.
Absolutely. Because, this is the one that I have the most to say about. And you are absolutely correct. Knucklemania 5 from BKFC was not only a really well put together production, a very large scale production for an organization of this type and size, but it was fun as fuck. These
Yeah.
fights were just great. And also, as you kind of alluded to as well, it was a really fun time in the chat. A whole lot of activity with a whole lot of new people stopping by. So thank you very much to everybody who is a new follower, new subscriber based on Knucklemania. That was really cool.
Yeah, this is honestly, it had WWE vibes, which I think right off the bat you could feel that it just had some heart and soul to it. And then once the fight started going, I think it rides on a lot of hype. I think is the main key for this, is like, something's coming, and when it doesn't, it's even still like a really good matchup in this. And I think they've really kind of perfected the amount of rounds and time. I think in the prelims we saw people who weren't getting finishes, and they ended up being sloppy towards the end of the fight, unfortunately. But then once you got to the actual good people, wow, these fights were just flying by and they were getting active.
Nah, man. I mean, I think you might have been still switching back and forth through some of these because I mean, the first fight did go to decision, still a very
Yeah.
hard fought fight, but the second fight on the prelims, knockout there. The disqualification one was pretty ridiculous. That was like the
I remember that one. That one was, it was a fun fight because I was, you know, we had people who wanted the other guy. Like, he was just putting money on random people on the favorites. I'm pretty sure the Noah Norman was the favorite that he put on or something, and Phil did a really good job. This was a fun fight, actually. I thought
Yeah,
really.
absolutely, and shout out to Karakappa in that fight because he was really afterwards. You could tell he was pretty upset with the
Yeah,
amount of fouling that Norman was doing, and I mean Norman kind of conducting himself like a bit of a fool in there for that because I mean really there was no reason that he had to be disqualified. He sort of chose to be disqualified. It would seem. I think he was getting a little frustrated, is what it looked like to me on the watch along. But anyway, the point is though is that
yeah,
like
you're 100% right. I see the one decision, and maybe I just based like that was really a long fight compared to all the other ones. You're completely right. I see
but
that.
even in that fight, one of the stats that they had said, which was kind of wild, is that in their free fights, I guess that they were calling them prelims. It was a little bit, the way that they were communicating card was, it was a little bit different. But in the prelims, 12 knockdowns in the
Yeah,
prelims alone. So it was like, geez, that's pretty wild. I mean, and then it just kept delivering and delivering. These fights were really, really cool. I mean, like it was it's one of those deals that going into this, I was talking to the homie Bloomis. Shout out to Bloomis always. And he was kind of asking me, he was like, do you really like this BKFC stuff? It's kind of barroom brawly. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of technique. And, it's just kind of guys throwing hands just to throw hands and just kind of seeing when one is going to drop. And I was like, look, if you look at it that way, there's still value in it because it's
yeah.
entertaining as fuck for that. But that even being said, if you get into some of these later fights, like the female fight, there's only one women's fight on the card, Beck Rawlings and Taylor Starling. That was a decent boxing match technically. Like you could see the technique that was going into it. They were circling well. They were moving out at range. They were conducting themselves in a technical fashion. Like I really gave it up to the ladies on this card, in addition to the men. And you saw that there were times where there was actually some like thought put into the fighting on top of the brutality of it. So I got nothing but good things to say about Knucklemania 5, man.
I think I had the exact same opinion as Bloomis before I watched it. Like, I'm not saying I wasn't going to watch it because I was very excited for Knucklemania before I knew it was Knucklemania. First off, that's a really dope name. Actually,
Yeah.
scroll back down for me. Scroll back
Sure,
down for
sure,
me.
sure.
Sorry. But the thing that I will note is that once you actually sit down and watch it, it's not as brutal and as gruesome as the worst picture that you've seen about it, like every time. Like, it's really not as bad as like any other mixed martial arts card whenever they get a crazy knockout or whatever. But when Bloomis is saying that there's like, it's kind of no technicality, no, it's barroom brawly, I disagree when it comes to, you can specifically look at this John Garbarino fight. That dude may as well be the best damn bare knuckle boxer that we have seen because he doesn't get hit. That whole first round, he was, the way that he was ducking and dodging. First off, nobody else was doing it. He was getting real low. He was, just not getting hit. And then he just dropped a bomb of an overhand just like one time. Like, it really was, it looked like he was putting on a masterful performance compared to his opponent. And then you have the Patrick Brady fight. That one definitely kind of feels like more of a barroom brawler kind of finish, but like that was good. You see stuff like that in the UFC. So like it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. Now the women, I can say, if you are a little skittish, the women do go fucking hard in this sport. So they like, dude, they're gonna beat the shit out of each other. Like their faces all battered up after this shit. And actually, there's one more that I want to talk about. If you scroll down just a little bit, there was one dude that showed up on the weigh-ins and he had like shaky ass legs because his weight cut was terrible and he charged at his opponent. Well, the dude got knocked out so bad. It's the one that's like super viral. I know you saw it.
I
I'm
think you're
trying
talking about the Kane Tomlinson
Pat,
versus Pat Sullivan. I think it's that one.
maybe where he like flipped all over his body and then
Yes, yeah,
like,
that's
yeah,
the
dude,
one.
it
Yeah,
was
when he went
bad.
around the world.
Yeah, that one was horrible. That was horrible, but it was so awesome to see. Like, I can't tell you how awesome all the knockouts made me feel about like watching a combat sport. Like in any other sport, a knockout is like a highlight, yes, and they do give you like exhilaration, you know. But like these, like there's just really, I normally don't be the like super cheery, like getting all up into it kind of guy. But this, you have no choice. I'm telling you, it's crazy. Anything can happen in this.
Yeah, that is a great point there, is that anything can happen. I mean, you know, the back and forth of it was also something that kept you really on the edge of your seat throughout the entire thing, because when I say that there were 12 knockdowns, this wasn't just, I mean, and I'm just talking about the early part. There was way more than that. But I mean, like, you know, the number of knockdowns, we're not talking about just one opponent getting knocked down you know, in the fight. Like there were fights where both guys, you did it almost reminded me of Muay Thai in the sense that it's like, you know, there are times in Muay Thai fights where it like the momentum just swings and ebbs and flows in either direction at any given time in the fight. It really felt like that in this. You know, one guy gets knocked down, the other guy gets knocked down. It's like, who's going to be the one to really drop, you know, like that type of thing. And that really kept these fights very exciting and very entertaining. I'm glad that you brought up Garbarino and Brady actually specifically,
Oh,
because
yeah. Oh, I was gonna say, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah, sorry. I thought you were gonna bring up something else. My bad.
no, you're good. But I did want to mention that both Garbarino and Brady are friends of the homies over at Fight Show. So shout out to Checkmate Entertainment, those guys, Checkmate MMA. Garbarino was on their show. Garbarino was a huge favorite in this event, minus 2,000 favorite. So obviously you hope that that's going to come through. But Garbarino getting the job done in the first round, and an MMA guy on top of it. So I mean, this was his bare knuckle boxing debut. Comes out as a minus 2,000 favorite, pretty wild. Gets the job done in the first round, and proposes to his lady, and she, you know, gets the answer he was looking for. So I mean, talk about absolute Chad energy coming off of John Garbarino in his fight.
Yeah, that was exactly what I thought you were going to say right off rip. So I was going to bring that up. Yeah, definitely a fun time to see him be able to you know have that moment. Obviously, first round knockout in bare knuckle. I didn't know it was his debut. You know, minus 2,000. I didn't know any of that, but I do know after watching him, he's probably going to be one of the better ones already. I can tell. So
Yeah, and I mean, I can't say, I was sworn to secrecy, so I'm going to leave it at this. But there may be some interesting fight news coming from him, you know, about him in the near future. But I'll let the proper channels let that get out when it's
yeah,
time for
crazy
that.
Kev don't miss. You know.
Yeah. Well, he's certainly missing right now. Well, where's that boy at? But the other thing I did want to mention too is, as I was saying, Pat Brady, also a friend of Fight Show. He is a training partner of John Jones. So, you know, obviously in pretty good company down there in Albuquerque. He was part of John's camp for the Stipe fight.
Oh my gosh. I know nothing about, you know, Patrick Brady's friendships or anything about that, unfortunately. But I can tell you the most fascinating thing about this card. There was a giant dude who looked like John Fury, and it was absolutely ridiculous. This dude, one, he, you know, in boxing, when they pull their shorts over, you know, their belly up to their titties. Well, one, he couldn't even get him over his belly because his belly was just hanging over the shorts. And two, his titties were all out. Like, holy shit, this dude, one, was absolutely massive. This was one of the craziest kind of like the size difference, the weight difference. It's like, yo, match up a 125er with a 175er. That's basically what this was. And so, like, it was absolutely ridiculous. Even the fact that Joey DeWaco was actually winning at one point, and then the big, tall ogre actually won. And it's funny because he'll probably be fighting Ben Rothwell here soon, because like they're the only dudes left at this point that need to fight each other, or maybe he already lost to him because the dude's fought like 7 times in bare knuckle. He's like 4-3 or something like that. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's pretty
So
crazy. If you're familiar with old school Nintendo NES, he kind of reminded me a little bit of King Hippo. So I don't know if that might be a little bit before your time, Chase, but older heads will know what I'm talking about there. But yeah, that was a good example of a fight that was going in both directions. I mean, I think it's Devechko is how that Joey Devechko,
Oh,
I think is how that's pronounced. But yeah, he was up for a good amount of that fight, and then Stephen Banks is the dude that we're talking about here, the big guy. He was just able to weather the storm and got a couple of good shots in and laid him out. I mean, it's really one of those kind of momentum shifting sports, this bare knuckle boxing, that keeps you on your toes. So a lot of interesting ones in that regard. I wanted to also shout out a couple of other great finishes here. One being Brandon Meyer, who was a sizable underdog in his fight, comes out with a couple of stars shaved into the side of his head. He's screaming at the camera. You can even see his picture here. He's mean mugging like a crazy man because he's got a little bit of a screw loose, but he goes out there. Not only does he get a really nice knockout, but then cuts a fantastic promo on the mic afterwards saying, he is not a B-side fighter. He's one of the best bare knuckle fighters in the world. I was like, I can fuck with this dude. So you're getting everything that you want. When Chase said that it's kind of like a WWE event, like it has that feeling, but you got the realness, which is what I always look for. I want the real when it comes to my fighting. And like, you're getting it here. You've got like personality. Of course, we got to mention that Connor is involved here. So
I
how,
was gonna say the evil boss is lurking. Like that's why it's the WWE vibes, because Connor appears at some point, just walking in the ring, does nothing but take pictures, then leaves. It's crazy.
well, it did a little bit more than that. I mean, we should talk about the main event too. So,
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
this was the main event. Sadly, I wanted to talk about both of them. I mean, Ben Rothwell in the co-main, getting a win to get the heavyweight championship over Mick Terrell. Really, really nice one-punch knockout. Reminded me of Mark Hunt, and kind of ironic in that sense because there are rumors going around that Ben Rothwell versus Mark Hunt might be happening in bare knuckle. I really hope for Mark Hunt's sake that does not happen. He is almost 50 years old. He really should not be. There's that dude does not have any business being in a combat situation at this point. Save your brain cells for chess, Mark. I'm a big fan. Don't want to see him taking any unnecessary damage. But either way, really nice walk-off KO for Ben Rothwell. And then the main event was, unfortunately, I'd say the a little bit of I don't want to say a letdown because it was still a good fight, but it was like energy wise a little anticlimactic because it got stopped on the stool basically in between rounds. This is Eddie Alvarez versus Jeremy Stevens we're talking about here, and I mean, Jeremy Stevens still has hands, and he was taking it to Eddie Alvarez. Alvarez looked like he was doing okay in the first round. Second round started to not go his way, and then apparently his jaw got broken in somewhere in there, and they called the fight.
I actually think it's kind of wild that I'm the only person that seemed to notice this, because it was clear as day. The camera was on, Eddie Alvarez on that last shot, and he's on his knee or whatever, and he is clearly saying, "I'm done." Like, I'm done. And then I assume the ref said, at least go to the stool, because the round, or the round was about to end. He's like, just stand up, get to the stool, kind of deal. And then at the stool, that's when they called it. So it wasn't a TKO, it was a corner, stoppage or whatever. And I think, in my opinion, I don't know how I'm the only one who saw Eddie Alvarez say, I'm done. Like, I'm calling it. But that's what I saw. So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to gauge all of exactly what that is in the moment. It could have been interpreted as or perceived as, like, I'm good, and then that happened or whatever. Alvarez is as tough as they come, so it's like,
true.
I highly doubt that he was going to be like, no mas, you know what I mean? Like, that's just not the kind of guy that he is. But
He did suffer a broken jaw.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, no disrespect to him for the way that went down. I mean, the shots that he was taking were super heavy. I mean, I had him on the parlay. It was unfortunate for me because I got 2 out of 3 on the parlay, which really would have been nice to have him pull through, especially also being a Philly guy. And this took place in Philly, one of, if not the largest combat sports event in Philly. It sold out the Wells Fargo Center, which is a very major accomplishment for an organization in the combat sports space that is not marquee boxing or the UFC. So big shout out to BKFC for that one. But it was just a little bit anticlimactic just because of how great all of the other fights had been on the card. It would have been nice to have had like your one last hurrah and triumphant either knockout or, however it would have finished. It would have been a little bit nicer to have it capped off with a bang instead of a little bit of a slight whimper in the way that that went down. But I don't think it took too much away from it. It really couldn't have, with the amount of action that was on this thing.
Well, and I think shout out to Elite in the Discord. I think he made a crucial point that he didn't even follow throughout the card. He said right before he was pondering bets, and he said, "Can you even be a heavy favorite in this sport? Because literally, it's more likely that anything is possible in this sport, and in this promotion." And then we go through this card, and there's just so many back and forth. Even when you get to the co-main and the main event, it's like you get a co-main with Ben Rothwell, who's like a plus 200 dog, in my opinion, the freest money ever. And then you get to the main event, and then Jeremy Stevens actually is the hardest hitting 145er. So it is pretty crazy,
Yeah, absolutely. And the one last thing that I have for this, in victory for Jeremy Stevens, of course, Connor, who made the entire press conference about himself, showing up to the press conference an hour late, and then cutting a pretty decent but a little bit unhinged promo to sell the event in the presser. Kind of makes it all about himself in the finale of the event as well. Jeremy Stevens is accepting his victory. He's getting his hand raised, and Connor comes in, starts pushing and shoving, and saying that he wants the fight with Stevens in bare knuckle. Which, what I had said. So, well, to be pragmatic about it a little bit, what I had said about that is, I think that casuals, I don't think are going to care one way or another. If Connor's fighting, it's going to do numbers, right? Like, if they actually do book that fight, if they're able to, there are two things that kind of go for it. Because, as you might recall, Connor and Logan Paul were being rumored for a major mega fight over in India. That was the rumor that was circulating for a while there. Turned out to be completely unfounded. And then also, I think that it had also come out that Dana put the kibosh on that one as well. So the difference here, I think it has two things going for it. One, David Feldman, who is like the Dana White of BKFC, had actually met with Dana at one point to kind of discuss promotional elements of the two organizations. So I don't know what came out of those discussions. It was kind of closed door dealings or whatever, but there is a relationship there at least. It's not like they're bad blood type situation. They're not like super rivals or anything like that. Two, actually, so I guess three things. Number two, I just found this out today. Ryzen has a deal with Bare Knuckle that they are doing co-sharing of talent for Bare Knuckle events, which is kind of interesting. Ryzen also has a talent sharing agreement with the UFC. We had kind of touched on that in a previous episode, talking about how that's why Sean O'Malley went over to Japan, and that's how we got Kai Asakura in the UFC. Like, these organizations seem to be at least open to working with each other in some capacity. So those all are going in favor of this. And then third, obviously, Connor, in this, I think that this is a much more palatable matchup for actual fight people, considering that Jeremy Stevens is a name that fight fans recognize to an extent still. The "who the fuck is that guy" meme will live in infamy, so there's a little bit of history there. I think that it would actually be a fight if it was the two of them, and bare knuckle, there's very little that you can hide. So I think that all of those factors kind of going into it make that a somewhat plausible and more palatable matchup, potentially, if all of the stars could align for it.
Yeah, I think this one is just crazy that I find it ironic that the inauguration happens. Connor goes, Logan's there. Presumably Dana's probably there. I didn't see pictures, but then the fight in India is now off. I'm not saying Dana pulled the trigger in person, but they must have ran up to him like little brothers and like, "Hey, Dad, like, can we go? We're going to India." And he's like, "No fucking chance. Connor, you're not doing anything, brother. Not getting anything." So
Yeah, well, he's certainly doing something, but
yeah,
it ain't fighting in India. Well, that is interesting that you bring that up, though, because that was one other aspect that I thought kind of screwed the pooch on that fight if they were actually legitimately pursuing it. Who even knows if that was really a thing or not, if it was just some shit that the internet made up or whatever, what the reality of it is. But if you are going to be fighting with one another, it does not help your cause in the selling of a fight to be pictured on a bus joking and laughing and having a great time with each other. So I was like, I mean, any of your like, yeah, I think that like people who actually follow combat sports already know that it's a bunch of fluffy bullshit anyway whenever a Paul brother is fighting, because Jake was also in the equation there, and at the inauguration Jake had Mike Tyson up on his shoulders, you know what I'm saying? Like, so obviously the two of them, you know, it's all money moves. We get what this really is. So I don't think anybody really would have thought, oh man, they really hate each other, man, this is really going to be a big thing. It's like, it would have been a fucking bullshit fight to begin with, and I think most people know that. But for whatever little elements that you might have in selling a fight in the lead up to it, it kind of goes out the window if the two of you are taking pictures with each other and fucking, you know, mugging for selfies.
Yeah, this one is honestly, and gosh, you know, I just can't get over how good of an event this was. And I find it ironic that, you know, people, you know, speaking back to Bloomis's comment about how the sport is just might be too gruesome for some. It's like, this is what they were doing at the docks in that one warehouse, and these dudes were prize fighting. And I just find that, you know, history really does repeat itself, and they were fine back then, and they want to quote unquote they were tougher back then. So here we are, we're running it again. I like this bare knuckle stuff, and I'm really all on board. That's just all that I'm just keep running through my head is how this is in my tier list of successful promotions that are making great leaps to have exponential growth. You got the UFC, of course. Bare knuckle is 2. Karate combat is 3, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And so, you know what? Let's move over to Karate Combat. There was a Karate Combat event that happened as well last Friday. It was very cool to see Karate Combat putting this out there for free on their YouTube channel. A number of different outlets had this thing streaming, and you could just watch it right there. No paywall, no nothing. So that was really, really good to see. I came into this one a little late as well, unfortunately, but I know that Chase, you were watching for the majority of this. What did you think about this Karate Combat event?
I think the entirety of the event was pretty solid. I think there's a lot of people out there who, if you were watching this expecting it to be more than a martial arts showcase, then you were probably let down. And I don't mean that in a bad thing against Karate Combat. I enjoyed sitting through this entire thing, watching from the grappling events all the way until the martial arts events. And a lot of them were not only exciting, but the people, I want to see more of the fights from these fighters. So I'm hoping that we get another card this next month, and we have people like Robelis, you know, with after his fucking 6-second knockout or whatever it is, 12 seconds. And then you got Eileen Pereira, another knockout. These people can continue to do this because the sport, in my opinion, is just, it's set up in a way that fast fights can be eligible if you get the right competition in. And there's actually one thing that I want to note before we continue about Robelis. So if you go to the grappling, there's this one dude, Audrey. His last name is Audrey. There we go. Fabricio Andre. This dude, I have never seen grappling. Like, he does this weird move, and it's kind of hard to explain. So if you imagine full guard, right, and you got your legs up, he actually has his legs above him, and he hops towards his opponent, right? And then when they grab and turn his legs, he triangles them.
Ha!
And it's like his move. And I don't know, does it say did he win, or how do I see this? Did he win? No, he lost.
I think that the green is the winner.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, he
And
did not win.
None of these grappling events had obvious winners. Like, none of them where you were like, okay, he won. Like, he was just on top of all the moves. Now, granted, I don't know how necessarily I'm to score grappling events because I don't watch them that often. Sure. But that Andre dude might be cooking. He might have something very, very interesting going. And it's weird to see because, like I said, what I explained to you, his legs are above his head and he's on his back hopping at you. And when you get engaged, he just swivels, and I can just say that it was interesting to see, and he might be onto something. I don't know.
Fair, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm gonna have to go back and check the VOD on that one, which is available. So if you want to check out this Karate Combat card, if you missed it, you can watch the entire event on their YouTube channel. But certainly I guess it's a strat, you know.
It was definitely something. One more thing I want to note. I don't think you were here for, well, a couple
Yeah,
more things I want to know.
sure.
I don't think you were here for another fight. There was a Rebellis clone.
Uh-oh.
There was a 20-year-old Cuban. He was 6'5", heavyweight or whatever. Yeah.
Yorobis Castaneda.
Terrible. He gassed so early, and just like Robellis, he just didn't have it in him. And the Valdez dude was like way shorter than him too. Like he was just putting it on him. Let me think. This Alexander Kruskit guy, I don't know. I have no idea how you say it. I couldn't even hear when they said it, but man, he was fucking good. He was good as hell.
Okay.
Yeah, he was really good. I'm trying to think of some more that I'm trying to think of some standout.
Yeah, I came in at the Brendan Jenkins fight and
Gotcha.
saw
Damn,
him.
there was a lot going on. Damn.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty packed card, honestly. I mean, one thing I was going to mention about BKFC, and I don't know if maybe you can lend some insight as to how this was in Karate Combat, but I thought that the pacing of BKFC was really good. So, what do you think about that in Karate Combat
It felt
with all
very
these competitions? Sorry.
it actually felt very similar, that the fights were on, they were off, and then they were back on. Like there wasn't any fluff to it. But I can agree that some of these fights in the earlier prelims, like I said, these can be just strictly martial arts bouts. Like you're not going to see in the early prelims of this, you're not going to see those killer highlights. And I know I talked it up to be that, and it does get to that point. But for right now, we have a lot of prelim fighters who, when they get out there, they gas early, or they just don't have that mentality to go out there and finish somebody. Because in all aspects, when you watch this, it just feels like a very pure form of striking. And I think it's just very fun to watch and see how they, the chess match that's going on. You don't have to have a knockout every time when you're watching two people who are breaking down each other's styles. It's a fun time. I think it's an environment that, again, you just have to experience and be ready to sit down and enjoy with the bros. Like,
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, of the other ones that I was around for, like I said, Brendan Jenkins was doing his thing. Got to see Brendan Jenkins fight in bare knuckle MMA live, and met him. Very nice guy. But he did some work in his fight. Got the victory there. Tyson Nam also got a victory. Tyson Nam, I believe former UFC guy, if I'm not mistaken. So cool, work there too. And then of course we definitely saw Robellis do his thing very quickly. That dude is the same as he ever was in the UFC. He is just swinging around those huge tree trunks that he's got for limbs and knocking people out very, very rapidly. I mean, that fight was about as quick as it gets.
yeah.
And then the Pereira fight was the only one that for me I felt a little bit kind of iffy about, only because it seemed like a very quick stoppage in that fight.
Yeah, I can see why you feel that way, but in all honesty, Eileen, she's an animal. She was gonna get up and knock her down again. Maybe he was saving her from preemptive. I hate it, but listen, Eileen, she's built different. One thing I will note also, the disqualification to the elbows, back of the head part with Ilias and Lucas Martins.
Oh
That
yeah.
that was definitely a weird moment. You can tell that the promotion is still early in its lifespan, because they don't know how exactly to handle weirdness. We were unsure what was going on. There wasn't a translation being told. There was just people being confused. The pit's opening. We find out the pit can open, so it was an interesting time. Speaking of the pit opening, which was a weird thing to see, another thing that was fucking weird, and also early in the lifespan of the sport, Robelis de Spain's flag wasn't even out of the pit when he got a knockout. It was just laying in the corner of it. Like, how unprofessional does that look? But
Yeah, well, I
whatever.
mean, and also when you were talking about the pacing and saying like it was, kind of a no frills sort of presentation, I was like, I mean, there were a couple because we saw the presentation of that piece of artwork, which nothing against the art. The art was certainly nice. It was just an odd thing to take a chunk of time out of your event to showcase this piece of art. There was that, and then in the main event. This Shazayeb Rind is from Pakistan, Pakistani champion in the organization. Cool. Shout out to Pakistan, somewhat of an underrepresented nation when it comes to combat sports currently. So nice to see some representation there. Gets his victory, and then afterwards we got a whole dance number, which was
Mhm.
kind of cool to see. I did enjoy it, but just somewhat unexpected.
Listen, that's confidence in your champ. That's all I gotta say. Pakistan knows how to. They brought the whole dance party and said he's gonna get it done, and you're gonna dance afterwards. Speaking back, well, actually, I will say I would have had my Pakistan flag, but UPS clearly don't know how to deliver stuff, so we'll try again tomorrow. But one thing I will note also about the art is I think it adds to the environment and like the vibe. So like when you look at the pit, right, it kind of gives you the vibes of like a skate bowl, right? And then when you have everybody crowding around it, and then you have the drones flying, and then you have people presenting artwork, and the environment is just legit. Like, I just think when I think of the UFC, right? And people are like, oh, do you want to go to the events if it comes to your area? And I think of sitting in this chair for 8 hours, just like I do at home, except there's dude right here, dude, whatever you want to say. It just doesn't sound appealing when I can do it right here. But when I think of karate combat, the way the venue is set up seems a lot more free roam, hang out with the pals. Fights are happening and you're at eye level to everything, not sitting up in the nosebleeds. And I know it's more like VIP access kind of feel too, but like that's pretty dope. I really like the karate combat. I'm on my way to an event. Like, damn, I'm coming.
Absolutely. And there are a good amount of karate combat events in Florida. In fact, this event that we're talking about right now took place in Miami. So next time that it is somewhere that I can make it out to one, within reasonable driving distance, I will certainly try to make it out to see it live myself. It definitely seems like a vibe.
Yeah, 100%. But like I said, man, it might get pretty pricey because this is kind of VIP section kind of deal. I don't know if you guys even saw in the highlights and promotions for the card that they're showing, and like they're showing older cards and highlights. There's one venue that they had where it was literally on a skyscraper in like the top row, and you can see the whole city from it. It's like they just know how to put on a venue. And I know that's not going to last forever. That's why you guys got to understand that you could have an experience that not everybody's going to have. When this gets to 15,000 people venues, like bare knuckle, I mean, like you got people getting higher and higher that are not going to be able to see. So right now, take advantage of what you got. Karate Combat is the place to be.
And potentially could be the place to see Mr. Chase Parton fighting in the future. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But yeah, so I mean, good stuff from Karate Combat. Good times had over there at that event. Certainly a fun presentation and some decent fights.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't as good as I maybe talked it up to be. I can be honest there. But this is still an early on promotion. Karate Combat 52 was very good, and unfortunately, not unfortunately, but it is just to note that Knucklemania 5, like they're on their fifth event and they've seemed like they got something fucking going.
Yeah, they're
Karate
cooking.
Combat, the Karate Combat, while that their 52nd event, give or take, they're not far off. There's good stuff here. It doesn't feel like they're eating away at themselves.
For sure. So, that is where Karate Combat is at. Moving on to a promotion that does keep on giving as far as eating away at itself to a certain extent here. I mean, we would be remiss if we did not keep our eye on the GFL. The GFL experiment continues. This was another Minor highlight of the weekend was that the GFL Draft that we had talked about in the last episode did in fact take place, with a couple of little oddnesses here and there as expected. So I guess to start off with the weirdness of GFL, Chase had mentioned when we were talking about it on the Karate Combat stream that the broadcast started a little bit late and felt like it might not have actually been live, but I think it had to have been live, at least in portions, because they were taking comments from, I guess, Instagram or some social media and like responding to them in real time. So I don't know if there were like pre-taped portions and then also live portions on top of it, or like how the whole thing was actually shaken out when it came to that. But the one thing that they started off with that I think has been the big talk of these drafts was the big animated AI intro with the little rap song that they had going behind it. Chase, what did you think of that segment?
I'm, I'm glad that we're to a point where people know what the AI stuff looks like, because like I watched it and I immediately jumped out of my seat like, no way, this is a full AI thing. And then grateful to see I get on Twitter and everybody has the same opinion, because I'm living a couple years back, I guess. I thought we were still of the assumption that people would get tricked by this.
Oh, hell, no, I don't know how anybody could have. It looked like PS5 graphics. You know what I mean? Like I felt like a like the intro to a video game to me.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. The people that they had on there, some of the faces were really wonky and waxy. Um,
Holly
it,
Holm
it
was one that stuck out to me when it came to that. I was like, well, that is not a great representation of Holly Holm's face.
and it's like, what the hell are you? Why are they on an alien ship? Like, why is there a spider? Like, okay, I get the spider. Maybe it's like, but Anderson Silva isn't fucking there. There wasn't a different one. I didn't think I saw the pit bull maybe for Patricio or whatever. But like, why are they on a spaceship? Why is the spaceship shaped like a fucking cube? Like, what? Why couldn't the AI draw a hexagon, right? Like, it was just bad. I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, a good amount of weirdness, at least in that element of it, for sure. Then, of course, the draft took place. It was a 3-hour event here with this draft, and it did feature a couple of notable names as far as commentary goes. I think we had talked a little bit about that. It had Mike Goldberg, of course, the former commentary main man of the UFC over there in GFL now. So that was interesting. And then Robin Black, who is normally the main commentary guy for Karate Combat, was over there in the GFL. So that was interesting. Then, of course, you also had everyone's favorite stand-up comic, Brendan Schaub, rounding out the trio there. That was an interesting element of it. So everybody was kind of playing their own little role in this presentation. And of course, you had a lot of interviews with these fighters as they're being drafted to the 6 teams that comprise this organization.
Yeah, this was definitely not my favorite thing to watch. It was 100% stupid, but I watched it and I made a lot of jokes. And then it went on for 3 hours.
3 hours. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So horrible, because then they stopped getting to the points where, like, they drafted Tony Ferguson, but they didn't have him talk till like 2 hours. And I remember coming back to it and I'm like, oh, there goes Tony Ferguson. And he's doing this fucking around the fucking kitchen and shit. Like, it was just not great.
Yeah, so I mean, there's really not all that much to say about the draft itself. I mean, pretty much as I described it is what it was. It was, them taking fighters onto these various teams, interviews with the fighters. That pretty much sums it all up there. But one thing that we had covered a couple of times before and continues to be an issue with the GFL is what we are calling phantom signings. That is where fighters are being announced as signed to this organization essentially without their knowledge, it seems, or definitely without their consent. And one of the more notable ones that just came out recently, almost in the midst of this draft happening, is one Rashad Evans here. So you can see it says, without my consent, Rashad Evans denies signing with GFL as he prepares for Rampage Jackson rematch. Now, that was the big element of all of that, is that him and Rampage Jackson are slated to be doing a boxing match. And Rampage came out and said, it's a little bit weird that Rashad is being announced for this GFL thing when I'm supposed to be fighting him. Rashad comes back and says, I don't know anything about this. They're putting this out there without my knowledge, without my consent. So this has happened now. I mean, I think that we're getting into like the double digits with this at this point, it feels like. I mean, I can't name every single one of them off the top of my head, but it's a lot of fighters who have been saying, what is the GFL doing? Why is my name involved in this? To the point where other organizations have been coming out and putting out statements about it. Octagon is a notable one with that, where Octagon specifically said, keep our fucking fighters' names out of your mouth because they are signed to us and that's an exclusive deal. So GFL continues to have these odd stumbling blocks, which make it very entertaining to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I agree. It's wild, wild west of MMA.
That is absolutely what it is. So that's really all that it is with the GFL right now. We're, of course, monitoring it. And I had said on the BKFC broadcast that I'm going to be doing a breakdown of the draft. I wasn't able to get that out in the time that I wanted to. This, just various life stuff going on that kept me from the schedule I wanted to keep for that. But I'm still going to try to do that this week. So keep an eye out on the channel for some more coverage of the GFL if you're as fascinated by it as we are.
Yeah, 100%. This one's going to be interesting. And like you said, we're going to keep up with it and we'll give you all the updates because there's going to be a lot of stuff going on.
It's the gift that keeps on giving so far, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that pretty much rounds out all of the coverage we wanted to do from outside of the UFC. I mean, we could talk just a very, very briefly just to say that the UFC was kind enough because there was no UFC event to do a rebroadcast of UFC 200. That is Tate versus Nunes. That is, of course, noteworthy for the piss yellow octagon. That's kind of one of the things that it's remembered for. A lot of people did not like the yellow octagon. I thought it was kind of cool. I wasn't too hating on it.
I agree with you. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was fine. So, but yeah, I mean, it was nice to. I watched a little, a couple of bits and pieces of it. Nothing really too much to say about this. I mean, this is one of the continued ascension of Amanda Nunes into becoming the GOAT that she would end up becoming. This is, of course, the card with Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt that would turn into a lengthy legal battle between Mark Hunt and the UFC based on Brock Lesnar testing positive for steroids after the fact. So, a couple of noteworthy elements to this card, but really more just a note that it was nice that the UFC put it out there for free. So if you want to go back and watch UFC 200, it's on their YouTube channel as a VOD now.
Yeah, it was definitely nice of them. And this is one, like I said, I don't mind these because on the off weeks, it fills out cards that I didn't get to see when they were actually live. So this is very nice of them.
Yeah, it's good for the history of the sport to be able to go back and watch some of these and get a better understanding of where we are now from where we came. So, good times.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on to the main event for us here. Of course, we go over every single fights on cards. So, we're going to do that right now, going over UFC Fight Night, Adesanya versus Imavov. This, of course, is taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. They have it down as the venue. I think Tapology had it listed as the A&B Arena. So I don't know if those are the same venue or maybe it just goes by two different names or whatever. Either way, it's in Saudi Arabia, and it is, of course, Israel Adesanya's return against Nasruddin Imavov, who has been surging in the middleweight rankings for a little while here. So what are your first impressions of this card as we go into it?
My first impressions are that I looked at this before, and I feel like people were kind of hard on 312 comparing the fight week before it. Like, I didn't think it was all that grand, but actually now that I look at it, I'm pretty sure a fight fell through, and that's what kind of shuffled up the order here, but this looks pretty fucking solid. This looks really good.
Yeah, they don't have it on ESPN Plus, but yeah, the Tapology page did have it with that Al Sawadi had like 2 opponents change out, and then I don't think that they ended up rebooking him. So yeah, this is a really solid card overall. I mean, I think that there's a lot of really, really good stuff on here. So um yeah, I mean, really going through it, like, because I did a little bit of research on this one to have the predictions be somewhat in the ballpark of where I wanted them to be, and going through even down to the very end, like the very first fight, I was like, there's definitely something to be said for each one of these fights. So
Yeah, we
um
can just start at the first one if you
yeah,
want. I was gonna make
absolutely, go
notes. I
ahead.
mean, my guy Hamdi and Jamal Progs.
Oh
My
yeah,
guy.
oh yeah, okay, go on. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
starting from the
yes.
very first. Yeah, gotcha, go for it.
So my guy Hamdi from Egypt. This will be interesting. You got a lot to represent here, and you're a heavyweight. People don't want to give you the props yet. They want to give you the slob title because all heavyweights will get that until you prove that you're not. So go out here, represent what you got. And Jamal Pogues is clearly nothing great. To be honest, bro, this Egyptian guy is huge. Like, Jesus. So I'm excited to see him, really.
Well, that's the note that I had. So Hamdi is technically 0-1 in the UFC at this
Oh,
point,
shit.
but no, but see, there's definitely some controversy there. So I mean, before the overturning, he was 1-0. His win was overturned to a no contest because he popped for steroids after his fight with Dontel Mays. So Hamdi, a little bit of a dirty cheater, perhaps. Maybe he's off of the cycle, but we've talked about that in the past, where coming off of a cycle of steroids can certainly impact your performance in your next fight. So we'll have to see how he looks there. Jamal Pogues, 2-1 in the UFC, plus a win on the Contender Series. I forgot that Pogues was a Contender Series guy, but notable wins for Pogues are Josh Parisian and Thomas Peterson, who is also fighting on this card. And then his loss was against Mick Parkin, who's been pretty goddamn good. So
Yeah, the fact that you brought up Hamdi being, a drug addict who does roids is pretty nuts, and what's his name? Antonio Trocoli treatment coming soon. He probably gets finished. So
could be. Yeah, very well could be. I mean, honestly, I think that the roids thing is really what's hanging me up on this one, because I like, if Abdel Wahab comes back like in fight shape, if he's coming back in a way that he's like still about it, then it could be a pretty decent like win for him. Because I think that if I recall correctly, he ran through Mays. Like I think it was a pretty solid win. Don't quote me on that one, but I want to say that was like a pretty open and shut case right there. But the
also on roids.
exactly. I mean, that's really it's the wild card that changes everything. So I'm going to put a like a tentative backing towards Hamdi in this fight. But this is one that could certainly go Pogues' way. And if you're looking at the line right now, the odds are pretty much a pick 'em. So
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you.
So, all right, moving on to the next one here is
Your boy
Bogdan.
Grod.
Yeah, my boy Bogdan Grod coming in versus Lucas Alexander. This is Grod's debut after his split decision win on the Contender Series. That fight was a war. I was a big fan of him from that fight. Alexander is 1-2 in the UFC. He's got a win over Steven Peterson, who has a win over Chase Hooper. So a little MMA math there if you want to play that game.
Featherweight pay Superboys chill.
Yeah, it's a good point. And then he's got losses to Jekka Syringe and
Sarah
Sarag, yeah, right. Jekka Sarage and Joe Anderson Brito is his other loss. So I think that this is a good fight for Grod. I mean, Alexander's one of those guys that's kind of just been around, I guess, a little bit. Doesn't really hold a whole lot of weight at the moment. I don't really have much much to give me like confidence from him in. So I guess my assessment would be go out there and get the job done, Mr. Bogdan.
Yeah, I agree. It'll probably be KO or decision, but most likely decision because I don't see Grodd. I can't remember if he knocked down or his opponent at any time, but I just don't remember if he had the power to it. Like, I mentioned it on that episode of the Contender Series. I personally watched this fight, and I must have been snoozing, dozing off because I didn't think that this was as good of a fight as people had said. But Thinker does believe that he put on one of the greatest performances on the Contender Series. I don't, maybe that's a little far, but
Well, it was
um,
definitely a war. I mean, it was,
okay.
I don't know if I would
A great
say that.
performance is a
Yeah,
stretch. My apologies.
but I thought that it was a very solid performance. I definitely do agree.
Yeah, so this one will be interesting. I'm really excited to see what he does. Because it was a split decision, so it could have went either way. But Lucas Alexander did get knocked out by Cheka, who literally lost so bad in this last fight. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. I guess it is what it is. And most toast in the chat. We see you, brother. We already have creators that we are dealing with currently on this channel. So um, no opinion about anybody else necessary until they come into the orbit of the Yama creative player universe over here. So
Yeah, but
we're
appreciate you. You're making me laugh for real.
yeah, for
Thank
real.
you.
I know. We're both kind of glancing over to the chat and laughing at what you're throwing down. So thanks for hanging out, brother. Appreciate you, man.
All right.
All right, moving on to the next fight here. I like this fight a lot, actually. This is Jasmine Jasdavicius versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Jasmine is 4-1 in her last 5 with notable wins over Miranda Maverick, Priscilla Kashweda, Fatima Klein, but we know what that fight was about. Fatima up a weight class, short notice, all of that. And then also Ariane Lipsky, and her loss is to Tracy Cortez. Myra is 2-2-1 in her last fight with wins over Stephanie Eggers and Lena Landsberg, losses to Raquel Pennington and Macy Chiasson, both good losses, but she is on a losing streak because of those. And then her no contest was to Holly Holm, but that was a win. She got popped for her Ritalin. That was back at the very tail end of USADA. Really kind of a raw deal that she got from that situation. So unfortunate that went down that way. That should have been a win for her. So I would say that she's 3-2.
I will say that I have been duped probably twice because MBS, Buena Silva, I only believe her to be good. And I wasn't here to witness anything that she did that was good, unfortunately, because the only thing that I witnessed her being good at is just getting a title shot, or getting a title shot against Rocky. So I assumed at that point she was decent. Like if you get a title shot, like come on, you got to be something. And then she's actually stunk up the bed. But with that being said, Jazz Davicius is kind of on a streak. She's looking really good. Not everybody can look good forever. MBS has got to have a comeback, or she's definitely looking on some rocky road because she's one of these players that she kind of, and this is honestly probably a good thing in the end. She knows, she looks to Dana as like an equal. Like she really tries to like communicate with them. Like she's, at least that's what I feel. And she like makes her points in her losses that are skeptical. She's able to go kind of plead her case, but that can't work forever. And I think she's just not going to get the opportunity to start pleading her case soon. If she loses another one, that's 3 in a row, especially if she gets finished or cut again somehow. Like it's just not good.
Yeah, definitely. The big note with Mayra Bueno Silva kind of goes back to what you were talking about in the title fight, because I don't know why it's not considered one of the worst title fights of all time. Like, we
Oh, it is, brother.
I guess
It
by
is.
some people, but it's like you always hear about Rose and Carla, that being like one of the worst fights of all time. I mean, like in the pantheon of like terrible title fights, that's certainly one of them. Of course, Israel Adesanya and Yoel Romero comes to mind. Like there are some that just are like held up in like the MMA conversation as like bad title fights. This one I don't think gets its proper due diligence as as one of the absolute worst, her and Rocky, because that was just such a snooze fest. But either way, you're absolutely right. This is kind of a make or break fight in a way for Myra. I don't necessarily think it would like put her into cut territory just yet. She'd probably get maybe one more just based on the fact that she had made it to a title shot. And then also some people have mixed feelings about the stoppage in the Chiasson fight because of that, big cut that she had gotten. Some people thought that could have gone on for a little longer. I was okay with that stoppage personally. I thought it was a pretty decent sized cut, and it didn't bother me that they stopped that one. But either way, 3 in a row never looks good, of course. So you're right. She does have a lot on the line in this fight. So I would say that she's going to hopefully be coming into to fight with a lot of intensity and really bring it to Jazz Devicius, who I mean, I don't want to discount the skill set of Jasmine Jazz Devicius, because I do think that she's very talented, but I don't really feel like she's had a lot of fighters like really take it to her in like a really gritty way. Like she's pretty technical, so she's able to kind of like navigate a lot of the clinch situations and sort of kind of ebb and flow her way through fights a lot. I think that Mayra Bueno Silva is actually a really good test for her in that way, because Mayra will be up in her face.
Yeah, I really hope so, because with the plus 190 and Myra really having to make something happen here, I think I might have to go ahead and say put money on her. She might come out with a new mentality, and she does kind of seem like one of those people that she can just bring it to you when she needs to, and I hope she figures out that she needs to do it now.
Yeah, I would like to see her come in heavy with the hands. I mean, if you let Jazz Devicius get her way when it comes to the grappling and the wrestling exchanges, then it's going to just be a long night. And at best, you're going to end up clinched up on the cage, and at worst, you're going to be on the ground somewhere you don't want to be. So,
What the
but
biggest thing to
yeah.
note is that Buena Silva needs to stay around, because she's the only girl that rocks the skirt, and it's very important. It's a good look, and she could be a trailblazer. It's a good look for MMA. I'm telling you.
There you go. All right. Well, for that reason alone, let's let's hope she gets her victory. But honestly, I mean, I am kind of siding with Jazz Devicius on this one. She's been on such a tear. I do think that she that she has a lot of potential to to win this fight. I think it really just depends on how Bueno Silva approaches it. So if Bueno Silva comes out with the intensity that I hope that she has, then she does have potential victory in that. But if she's kind of still on shaky ground, which she sort of has been, then maybe this goes Jazz Vicious' way. So I mean, this is another one of those ones that it's going to sound like I'm hedging my bets a little bit, and I sort of am. I'm going to go with Jazz Vicious, but have a separate parlay with Buena Silva on it.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
All right. Well, let's keep the
Oh
train
wait, this
moving
is
here.
going down a weight class for MBS.
Oh yeah, is it?
It looks like. I mean, weight 136, and
Okay.
Jasmine's 125. So you presume somebody's moving.
Yeah. I guess so. Yeah, I don't know where what I guess it's taking place at flyweight. So yeah, I guess Buena Silva is moving down. Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting indeed. So, well, I guess we'll see if maybe that gives her some kind of advantage there. Maybe that's part of the strategy to adjust after the losses. That could play a part.
Am I wrong, or did she miss weight before? I feel like she's had weight cutting issues.
That doesn't sound unfamiliar. That might be the case.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah.
See how it goes for her.
Sure. All right. Well, moving on. Well, they don't have it listed. Okay, they just have the order different. All right, well, we'll do it there by their order. All right, so next up they have, I think they ended up moving this fight to higher up on the card, but
Yes.
next up on ESPN's version of the order is Fares Zayam versus Mike Davis. Mike Davis, hometown hero for one Thinker St. James over here. So
yeah,
very cool.
It took me a minute to remember who these guys were. And unfortunately, I actually should have remembered Zayam's knockout against Matt Frivolo. That was pretty crazy.
Hell yeah.
Mike Davis, you wouldn't believe like how good his record is, because I don't know why I just don't see him as like a standout fighter. I don't know what he's doing in the cage that's not making me remember his performance or remember what he's necessarily great at.
Well, one of the major things, though, sorry not to cut you off, but one of the reasons that very well could be is that I didn't realize this until doing the research, but he is just sporadically active. I'd say that he is a pretty inactive fighter, unfortunately, because he's pretty good in the cage when he's doing his thing. But one fight in 2021, one fight in 2022, no fights at all in 2023. So that anyway. So I just wanted to add that note. But go ahead.
Yeah, and so it is pretty impressive because his record is really good, and I'm pretty sure the people that he's lost to are pretty decent names. Um, and he's on a win streak right now. Gilbert Burns, okay, not that great. And Sadiq Youssef, and
But
that
that
was
was
on the
Gilbert
Contender
Burns back
Series.
then, though. You know what I
True.
mean? That
Yeah,
like,
true. 2019. So
yeah. So that was kind of peak Gilbert.
it is pretty interesting, and I'm really ready to see what this one amounts to. Zaim surely can't live up to another knockout like that, but if he's one of these people that can creatively finish their fights, like somebody who we'll talk about later in the card, um, anything's possible.
Yeah, well, Siam is 4-1 in his last 5, with notable wins, of course, over Frivola. Obviously, that knee was pretty spectacular. And also, the other thing to remember about that fight is the knee was just the icing on the cake because he was putting
Yeah,
that fucking work in, man.
yeah,
So there was that. Then a win over Jai Herbert as well. You know, sticks out to some people, and another notable win over Jamie Malarkey. And his loss was to Terrence McKinney, who we'll talk about at some point going forward. And Davis also 4-1 in his last 5. Notable wins for him: Natan Levy and Vyacheslav Borshov. Of course, the loss we talked about, Gilbert Burn being the notable one there.
100%. Yeah. So this one will be interesting. I know we got some people in the Discord who are really trying to make some money off this, and I can see why. I mean, Zayn being an underdog, it's kind of worrisome. But Mike Davis, the numbers would say that he's a really solid guy that's in the prime of his life right now. So we'll see.
Oh yeah, no. I for me on this one, and this is no hometown bias at all. Like I don't care where this guy is from. Like after seeing like some of his performances recently, like I'm all in on Davis. In fact, I think that he would be one of my locks of the card. Perez is definitely good. I don't want to take his skill away from him. I think that Perez, if he's going to have a path to victory, it's going to be a lot about keeping distance and using his length, because he is a kind of a lankier guy, long limbs sort of dude. He can get the knees up there again and can, throw out some kicks and strike at distance. If Davis gets his hands on him, he's a really good wrestler. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Like I said, this one's going to be very, very interesting. And the prelims are only getting better.
Yeah, for sure. So let's keep it moving on those. I'm jumping
I
around a
guess
little
as
bit.
the time we watch it, they won't be getting better because I think this is moved to the main card, like you
Well, yeah,
said. So
that's what I'm saying. Like the order is a little bit weird, the way that they have it laid out versus how Tapology had it laid out, because that's where I got I did my research on it.
gotcha.
So I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit in the notes here, but we'll follow the order that they have on here. And next in the pecking order is Terrence McKinney versus Damir Hadzovic. McKinney 2-3 in his last 5, with notable wins over Brendan Murat and Mike Breeden. His losses are numerous. One lost to Esteban Ribovics, Nazim Sadikov, and Ismail Bonfim, the other Bonfim brother. Demir is also 2-3 in his last 5, with wins over Yancy Medeiros and Polo Reyes, who I was like, that name did not immediately jump out to me as one that I remembered. So, okay. But then his losses are kind of the more telling story here. Lost to Moicano, obviously that ages pretty well, but a loss to Mark DeCasey and a loss to Christos Giagos. Oh, buddy, those are
Yeah.
bad losses, my man.
Yeah, so kind of seems like they really want to give Terrence McKinney a chance because he kind of is a social media favorite. I think it's because he's so active on Twitter, but a lot of people do enjoy this dude, and he has a real wholesome story. I'm pretty sure. I'm not going to get too much into it because I don't know the details, but if he comes back and gets a win here some way somehow, he is a minus 125, which if you know Terrence McKinney, and I've only seen him fight like
Minus
twice.
525.
Yeah, what did I say? 520?
What you said 125. Yeah, no, he's a minus.
Oh, my,
Yeah.
fine. It's 525. Excuse me. Yes, that's what I meant somehow. But it is not. You couldn't take that money if I had a gun to my head. So we'll see.
Well, the issue with Terrence McKinney, and we've seen this time and time again, is that he is a run and gun fighter. This is a dude who, I mean, like I forget what the actual stat was, so don't quote me on the actual concrete elements of it, but like it was something like he hadn't been out of a first round in like 8 fights or something like that. I mean, it's something along those lines. The point is that like he either finishes or gets finished like immediately when these fights are
Yeah.
underway. I mean, like this dude is like he goes balls to the wall in every fight, win, lose, or otherwise, so it's potentially can be.
Respectable.
Yeah, I mean, and very fan friendly. I mean, he's obviously going out there wanting to put on a show, so I appreciate that. It's very much the Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje method of fighting, but he ain't one of those guys. So it's like,
Right.
could that end up working to his detriment? Obviously, it has in a number of fights. Could it end up working in his favor? Well, if he's going up against a dude who's also 2-3 in his last 5, and those losses are to kind of scrubby guys, then yeah, I would think that there's probably potential for for him to get the better of it. So I think that the line is a little bit odd. Yeah, I mean, like that heavy of a favorite, I wouldn't necessarily be throwing on that, because it's just, why would you at that price tag? But we'll just have to see if he's actually able to do what he generally does. Because
Yeah.
I don't think he's one of these guys that has evolved very much over time, at least not in the last couple anyway.
Yeah, I hear you.
So yeah, we'll see. I don't dislike Terrence McKinney. So I mean, like, it's like you're saying, he's on Twitter a lot. You see him in the little corner of the screen when they're doing the
Right.
Twitter commentary on the broadcast. He always has something interesting to say. So get the win and stick around, because I would think that Hadzovic over here is probably in a little bit of shaky territory, which does suck because he is representing the great country of Denmark. So I'm sure that Bloomis will be pulling for him.
Oh, wow. Bloomis don't even talk about him. That's honestly that's unfortunate. He talks about Nicholas Dalby too much. That Damir, I mean, he's 38, but like, dang.
Well, I mean, I guess maybe there's a reason.
Yeah, I know, right?
Not necessarily the best representative of the country. So we'll see what happens with him. But I think that McKinney's probably a pretty decent lock on this. Bet at your own risk, though, of course.
Yeah, that one's sketchy. I would not.
Yeah. So they still have this fight on ESPN, but I believe that this fight has been canceled. This is
okay. Good, because I don't fucking know either of them.
Yeah, Abdul Karim Zawadi versus Balaji Oki. Oki, we saw fight. Who was it that he fought recently? That I thought it was
Christian
Kwamba,
Leroy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and lost to Christian Leroy Duncan, but
no, I don't think that is Christian Leroy. I think that's
that's the Scottish. Yeah, that's the Scottish one. That's the shout out to our buddy Chris in the Discord, who is a student of Chris Duncan, or Chris Duncan,
something like that. Duncan. Yeah.
But cool. He was the one that beat Timmy Kwamba.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the Belgian guy. But as I said, I believe that fight has been canceled. So I don't, whatever. I guess if it ends up being on the card, then cool. But as far as Tapology had said, that fight is not going to be happening.
Yeah, did know too much about him anyway. So
yeah, and if that fight happens, of course, we'll be back next Monday to talk about all of them. So we'll give you the lowdown on it when we have it. But
100%.
Rounding out the prelims in your featured prelim slot, Shamil, the real deal, the meal deal, Gaziv versus Thomas Peterson. Gaziv, 2-1 in the UFC with a win on the Contender Series. His notable wins are Dontel Mays and Martin Budai. His loss was to Jairzinho Rosenstreich. Peterson is 1-1 in the UFC with a Contender Series win. His win is over Muhammad Usman. His loss was to Jamal Pogues. They were both on the same season of the Contender Series, by the way. 2023 was both of them, and Peterson won his Contender Series fight with a key lock submission. So I thought that was at least an interesting note to say that he's got some ground game.
I would also like to note that Shamil Gaziv also won his Contender Series matchup by submission. So this may somehow end up a grappling match. I damn well doubt it, because these dudes, I mean, you can look at them in the picture, guys. They don't want to do anything ever in their lives. So, this will be interesting to see. Shamil Gaziv should have a good comeback. This is a tailor-made matchup for him, even though Thomas Peterson, another young kind of prospect up in the heavyweight division. We don't get him very often, but Shamil Gaziv at 34, we ain't got no more time to waste. So let's get him in Saudi. Let's get him a knockout. Let's get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, he won his last fight, but if you're talking about a comeback to entertainment, then that's certainly something that we need, because good Lord, his last fight was the Dontel Mays fight, right? Yeah. That fight was, we talked about Raquel Pennington and Myra Bueno Silva being a boring fight. that fight, Gaziev versus Mays, should also be in the Hall of Fame as far as one of the worst fights that I have ever seen in my life. That is just atrocious. That
Yeah.
fight was painful to sit through. So, yeah, I mean, look, Gaziev is a dude who a lot of people like to meme with. He's kind of he's gaining a little bit of notoriety just for being himself, I guess. And all of those elements that we're talking about here with that very, very boring performance. I'd like to see something exciting in this fight one way or another. So Peterson, this would be a nice way for you to get something going for yourself, because really a win over Mo Usman does not hold that much weight to me. I mean, look, the Usman name is attached to it, so a lot of people will just go to that. But if you've ever, really like keyed into Muhammad's performances, he's just not that great. And so a victory over him does not hold a lot of water, in my opinion. Jamal Pogues is fighting on the first fight of the early prelims. That should tell you something there. A win over Gaziev gets you a little bit farther into the conversation, and being 1-1 in the organization, this is heavyweight. They certainly need better heavyweights. Somebody do something at heavyweight that we could actually talk about, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just really excited to see if Shamil can ever live up to being any type of deal other than like a 4 for 4. Like this is big dreams are trying to be accomplished vicariously through Shamil Gaziev. So I really hope that he can get this one done. At 13-1, there's still hope. Thomas Peterson, 9-2. I'm hoping you're on your way out like Romanov if you look bad against Shamil. So
Yeah, and there's certainly potential for that to be the case. So Gaziev by Tohold.
yeah, we'll see.
All right, moving on. Some perhaps more entertaining fights, hopefully. We got Muhammad Naimov versus Khan Offley. Khan Offley, tough finalist.
Yeah.
Notable wins over Nathan Fletcher and Rody Rhodes on the Contender Series. And, of course, his loss came to the Ultimate Fighter himself, Mr. Myron Santos. So good company there. And Naimov is 3-1 in the UFC. Notable wins over Nathaniel Wood and Jamie Malarkey. His loss was to Felipe Lima.
Yeah, this one is gonna be interesting. I'm really happy that they moved this to the main card, if indeed it stays there. I think Khan Ofly is what I say, by the way. Khan Ofly, I hope he can have a good comeback, and this would be a great one. This is another dog that I'm really believing in heavy, but Muhammad Naimov, I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to say. If he lost to what was it, Felipe Lima?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a pretty good matchup. Kano Fly is definitely not on that level yet, but I feel like he, as an Australian, he can pull something off, man. I believe in him.
I would say so too. I mean, the way that he fought on the Ultimate Fighter, you can tell that even if he's like still needing a little bit of polish, he's sort of in that early phases of kind of coming into what he really should be as a fighter, I would say, even though he is 31. So it's not, he's not there yet, but it's like it needs to start. Definitely now is like the time that it needs to start showing up. But even for as unpolished as he was, what I do think that he definitely has is a lot of like go get it attitude. Like he'll bring the fight to you. So I think that Naimov might get overwhelmed by that. I think that there may be potential for that. He's going to have to have his wits about him early. That would be my big note for Naimov, is just to be ready for the fight to be in your face from like the jump. If he can weather the storm on that, bring it into the later rounds, then yeah, I think Naimov might be able to take it, in that capacity. But I'm also kind of pulling for Offley, however you want to say it. Can the man go get it done, my guy? I mean, he's a pretty sizable underdog in this thing, so I guess the odds makers are thinking that essentially that Naimov is going to be able to weather what Khan is bringing to the table. I think that that's probably the more sensible bet, but if you're a gambling man, you could do worse than putting it on Khan.
100%. Yeah, definitely you can do worse. I've done way worse.
Yeah. Oh man, UFC 311. I think everybody did worse.
Yeah, true.
All right. Well, moving on a little bit farther. So as far as Tapology goes, this would be the slot where Zayam and Davis have been moved to. So I don't know if that's actually going to be what the final order is, but just noting that here. But as we see on our screen here currently, it is Said Nurmagomedov versus Vinicius Oliveira. Finally, Said Nurmagomedov coming back. He had a whole ton of fights canceled over the last couple of months slash years. I mean, like, I want to say like 3 in a row got canceled for him, one of which was supposed to be at UFC Tampa. So I was denied a Said Nurmagomedov performance in that event. But either way, he's finally booked. He's finally on the card legitimately, and he is going up against Vinicius Oliveira. Said is 4-1 in his last 5 with wins over Moon Gafarov, Kakramanov, and Cody Stamen. His loss was to Jonathan Martinez. Decent loss there. Vinicius is 4-0 in the UFC, counting 3-0 in the UFC plus a Contender Series win. Of course, the Bernardo Sopai knee is the one that sticks out for everybody, and also has a notable win over Ricky Simone.
Yeah, this one is honestly interesting because I can't really gauge who's going to win. This one is hard because Saeed has always been, in my opinion, one of the better strikers that I've seen with the Nurmagomedov name, even though it's not by blood that I've been told.
Right.
But Vinicius Oliveira is honestly just on a roll right now, and he might be on its way to something serious if he's able to get this one done. Like, this is a real test right here for me. And he's a little showboaty at times, in my opinion, but some people can get that done. And if we hop on board now, we might be able to watch something serious. As a big dog, not even that big of a dog, but as a dog, this might be good money right here as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that in the Ricky Simone fight, he definitely looked more beatable. It was certainly not the same. He himself even said that the Sopai performance, he was kind of styling a little bit more. He was doing his whole little showboaty thing, like he had mentioned in the Simone fight to an extent too, and it was like, why are you doing that? Because it's not the same level of ass whipping that you're laying down right now.
Right.
Definitely, enough to get the job done. So I think is going to do himself more hurt than help when it comes to being a showboaty kind of guy. Like, read the room a little bit when it comes to how you're fighting, because the fans are going to start getting on you for that kind of stuff. And as you're writing your narrative, just coming into the organization, you probably want to endear yourself a little bit more to the fan base than what you're doing with that showboaty shit. That all being said, there is certainly potential for him to get this win. It would be a decent name, even as Chase mentioned. Of course, the Nurmagomedov name is not by blood to Khabib, but people just see it and automatically it's a knee-jerk reaction to it. So having a win over a dude with that last name helps you in just a general sense, and it would be a nice way for him to kind of continue catapulting himself. So plus 155, again, not terrible dog if you're looking to be a little bit risky with it. That being said, though, I do think that Said can get this job done. He just needs to, again, this is another one where, like, bringing the fight to the competition is going to work in your favor. So if Said wants to, like, hang back and try to strike from the outside, I don't think that that's the best strategy here. I think that you should really be in Vinicius's face, like go out there and bring the fight to him, as opposed to trying to counter and stay on the outside.
Yeah, 100%.
So we'll see. I'm a little bit on the fence. This is another one where I'd probably hedge the bets. I'd say that I'm going for Said in this fight, but I'll put Vinicius on a secondary parlay.
I hear you.
All right, moving into the main stretch here, we got Sergey Pavlovich versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Pavlovich 3-2 in his last 5. His wins recently were over Curtis Blades, Tai Tuivasa, and Derek Lewis. His losses were to Tom Aspinall and Alexander Volkov. That is a 2-loss streak that he is on. Jairzinho Rozenstruik also 3-2 in his last 5. His wins were over Tai Tuivasa, Shamil Gaziev, and Chris Dawkins, I believe. Chris or Kyle, I forget which one, but one of the Dawkins brothers. And his losses were to Jalton Almeida and Alexander Volkov as well. So some shared competition between these two guys. They have not fought each other yet, but here we go. Can Pavlovich come back, Chase?
No, I'm going to go ahead and say that the Russian missile crisis might be just, I mean, he might be cooked, man. Rosenstrike has been looking good on the outside with his kickboxing. He looked not, I can't say rare form because I don't know what form he was ever in, but he does look locked in. Like he looks like he's locked in to get these fights won the way that he wants to. Losing to Volkov isn't horrible on both of their ends. Obviously, losing to Tom Aspinall isn't horrible on Pav's end, but it's a noticeable decline. If you lose to Tom Aspinall and then Volkov, it's like, okay, well, who are you losing to next? So this one is just very interesting. If Rosenstrike is able to keep this up, man, he really does have the mobility of a young guy. I don't know if the athleticism is necessarily still there for him, but the mobility and the evasiveness, the style, it's working for him right now, and it might lead to something a little higher than Pavlovich somehow, maybe a Volkov fight or a Cyril Gane fight. But Sergey, man, I don't know. I hate to just outright say no, but it's really hard for me to see it right now because Volkov was able to eat you up on the outside, and that's not really even what he like, So
yeah, I mean the real issue I think with Pavlovich is just that he did not look like himself in that Volkov fight. Something was very off in that fight. I mean, I want to believe that if he gets whatever mental, I'm putting it on the mental because that's the only thing I can really go off of. I don't know if there was other extenuating circumstances. Maybe the teammate element of it might have died. I don't know exactly what I know. And that is eye rolly to say, right? I mean, of course it should not matter in the slightest. I mean, especially for a guy who for the longest time was just going up and knocking people out. He with one punch knockout power for sure. I mean, hadn't gotten out of the first round for the majority of his fight, if any, I believe. I mean, he was go in there, get the job done, and that was that. So I don't know what the full on set of circumstances were in that fight, but he did not look like himself, and that certainly is very telling, especially after having just come off of the loss to Tom Aspinall. So I don't know if I'm going to go outright and say, like that I'm agreeing with Chase saying that he's completely done, but I did want to do some high level MMA math for you right now. So we talk about how John Jones opponents, after they fight John Jones, are never the same, right? Dominic Reyes, Thiago Santos, Alexander Gustafsson all come to mind as fighters who made it to John Jones and then were never the same. So Pavlovich fights Tom Aspinall. Perhaps he is not the same because John Jones is ducking Tom Aspinall. Huh? I think that this is some MMA math that might check out. What are you thinking here? Am I cooking or what?
You might be cooking a little bit, but I'm not going to go too far into the conspiracy theories here. I just really hope that both fighters come out here with a lot to prove because this is a big moment for either one of them. I mean, Sergey's either going to fall off hard, which if he hasn't already, or Rosenstrike is going to be uplifted really, really high. So
no, I agree. Yeah, I mean, bringing it back down to earth a little bit here. You are right. Rosenstrike has been looking really good in his fights lately, but I mean, I feel like you got to keep it in perspective to an extent. But and at the same time, it's like this is the heavyweight division. So it's like because I was say win over Tuivasa doesn't hold much water. Win over Gaziv, Dawkins brother. I mean, you know what I mean? These are all just kind of meh wins, but that's what heavyweight has become. So it's like, yeah, Pavlovich's wins are certainly more impressive, but that you're in the same sort of camp. Curtis Blades, loses to Tom Aspinall. It's like, okay, I mean, there's like obviously a hard ceiling here. Tai Tuivasa for Pavlovich as well. We just talked about that. Derek Lewis, very spotty, of course, a fan favorite, but you know what it is with Derek Lewis. It's either kill or be killed a lot of the time. So, I mean, it's an interesting matchup in that regard. I mean, I want to believe that Sergey Pavlovich can come back, get the cobwebs out of the head, whatever was hanging him up in that fight, that he can shake all of that and come back into his old form. I think this would be a really good bounce back fight if he does win this, because Rosenstrike has been doing some decent work. If he does not win this fight, I think that the two of them switch places, like as far as like not only in ranking terms, but like in perception terms as well. Like, Rosenstrike starts to become a guy that gets back into the conversation. He was already in the conversation for a little bit there. I mean, how quickly we forget the time that when Francis Ngannou was still around, like he was the dude that a lot of people were looking towards to say like this might be a guy who could actually get the job done. Of course, that did not happen, but times are different now. Things change, and this could be his time to shine. So this is an interesting matchup for that reason. Both these guys have a lot on the line in this one.
I 100% agree.
So yeah, I mean, so final conclusion on this one for me. I'm gonna. This is a hard one for me to call. I mean, it comes with a caveat, but I'm going to say that if Pavlovich comes back and does not look like he looked in the Volkov fight, if he has it to the point where he is back in his locked-in state that he was prior to his losses, then he wins this fight. If that guy is just gone, then that's what it is.
It's just tough is what it is, man.
Exactly.
It's really unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that this is another one where I'll go with Rosenstrike, but have Pavlovich on a separate parlay. I'm gonna have a whole bunch of separate secondary parlays going on in this one.
I hear you.
All right. Moving on to your co-main event. Shara Magomedov versus Michael Venom Page. MVP is 1-1 in the UFC. He has a win over Kevin Holland. His loss is to Ian Gary. Shara is undefeated in the UFC. His wins are notable wins, that is, are over Armin Petrosian, Mikhail Olashechuk, and Antonio Tricoli. MVP's most recent win was in a grappling match against Carlos Condit, of all people, which that was just an odd thing that I wanted to throw in there as a just an odd little side note. Does not have any bearing on this fight, but just did not expect to see Carlos Condit popping up in any capacity anymore. I did not realize that he was still competing even in grappling terms. And then B, getting beaten by MVP in grappling, who just got out grappled by Ian Gary. Just an odd note. But anyway, what are your thoughts on this fight, Chase?
I actually would like to make a point that MVP, if he did anything, he made the right move to leave Bellator. So
you think so?
I mean, there's no Bellator no more.
Well, I mean, but okay. Well, I mean, take the Bellator part out of it, but I mean, even PFL. I mean, he's 1-1 in the UFC. I mean, still high level ish. A win or a loss to Ian Gary is aging pretty well. I mean, Ian Gary, of course, just challenged Shavkat Rakhmonov in a fight that he did not win, but I think people still gained a lot of respect for him. Almost finished Shavkat in that fight.
I think when he came in beating Kevin Holland, he kind of took a little bit of his gatekeeperness, because now MVP, for what he is right now, he's the fun guy that we want to see against the fun strikers. I know Ian Gary wrestled with him, but at the time it was striker v striker. Like, Ian Gary is an elite striker. Same thing with MVP and Shara. This is a good matchup for him to just come in here. And I don't say he was like not necessarily gatekeeping anybody out, but he's somebody that they throw in there for a specific style against somebody. So I think that's important. And this is up a weight class, so he seems versatile. That's what the business loves. He can go back down if he wants, like he said, and we'll see what fun matchup he gets. Maybe it's the Wonder Boy send off. Who knows?
Could be. Well, so all of that being said, what's your assessment of this fight? I mean, who's going to win?
Oh, Shara's going to win. MVP's 37.
All right. Well, I mean, just going off of age, you don't think that the elite striking of MVP is going to be able to beat the fucking weird spinny shit of Shara?
No, I'm gonna take Shara again. I don't know why we're gonna be surprised, because he really is like, if he had two eyes and was knocking people out, we would all be like okay with it. We'd be like, wow, look at this guy. But it's the fact that he's got one eye leaves you to believe that he's not as good as he actually is. But he is finishing people. Like, it's not like he's just going out here and getting some fluke stuff. Like, he fought 3 hard rounds with Anthony Trocoli and bounced his head off the cage. He fought a good 2.5 rounds with Armin, not Sarukian, Petrosian, and bobbed him hard. So I'm just saying, like,
double bopped him.
Exactly. Like, so, like, Shara really is him. MVP, maybe at one time if the right people were watching him, and he did have his time as the charismatic, creative striker. But I think Shara is just younger, and I think he's just in his mode right now. He's very active. What we often forget about Shara. He fought 3 times last year, got 3 knockouts, I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong.
He went to decision with
With
Olszewski,
Olszewski.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
But either way, I mean, look, the logic is certainly there. I'm not going to deny you on that. I I feel like I'm just a hater. And I'm thoroughly admitting this because there is just something about Shara when I see him fight that just does not scream elite to me.
Mhm.
And I mean, I really wish that I could put my finger on it a little bit more, like definitively. It's just something about like his methodology in these fights just seems very like slapped together. It seems somewhat sloppy. It just has been working for him. And
Mhm.
again, I could just be a hater on this, and I will thoroughly admit that. I want to believe in this fight specifically that the technicality of MVP is going to be what takes him to a victory. I think that and I think he needs a victory at this point too, because you don't want to be 1-2.
Yeah.
And this guy is undefeated. Obviously has a little bit of an aura that he's created for himself just with the look and all of these other things about him. Obviously the double spinning back fist is always going to now be associated with him. So there's a lot that he has bringing into this fight. So I don't want to take those things away from him. I just think that there's like he just seems like a solvable puzzle to me. The same thing I said about MVP. That was the exact terminology that I used about MVP after his first fight against Kevin Holland. I had said his style is somewhat understandable, and there are going to be guys that can figure it out. I don't know if Shara is going to be the one that's going to be able to navigate it the same way as other high-level strikers. I wanted to see Ian Gary do that to show the roadmap for it, but he decided to take a different route. So, I mean, look, I do believe that Shara has potential to win this fight, but I also do believe that MVP has potential to win this fight. Like going out there and then like outright saying, "Oh no, he's 37." I don't buy that.
I think I gotta go with it, man. I'm just really excited for this one. I'll tell you that, though. MVP really does bring a spectacle to his performances, and Shara does too. I mean, when Shara comes out and he's got his greasy hair all over his face, and it's really fun.
Yeah, and I'll certainly grant you that. That Shara, there is entertainment value in these fights for him for sure. I don't think that any of his fights have been like exceedingly boring or anything. I mean, maybe the Olszewski fight to like a minor extent, but not even that. No, that was still a really like decent fight. It just sucked because Olszewski was just kind of deer in the headlight for a lot of it.
Mhm.
But so yeah, I mean, I do think that this has a lot of potential to be a fun matchup. I hope it lives up to that. Like I said, I'm pulling for MVP on this one. Would I be surprised if he does not win? I mean, after the fact, no, it'll be like one of those, yeah, I mean, I probably should have seen that coming kind of situations, but coming into it, I'm going to go with MVP. After this fight, I promise, I make this promise right here on the show right now. If Shara wins this fight, I'm going to have to stop being a hater. It's
100%.
it's going to have to happen. So
The
I already
pirate has captured this island.
exactly. There you go. I mean, like, and I already sort of was in that camp anyway with after the Petrosian win, because how do you deny the double spinning back fist? That was cool as fuck. So, I'm slowly coming around to Shara. This one will be the one that really gets me over the hump.
I get you. I'm ready for it.
I'm ready for it too. The same way that I am ready for the main event of this card, of course, Israel Adesanya versus Nasruddin Imavov. Adesanya 2-3 in his last 5. Of course, his wins over Alex Pereira and Jared Cannonier. His losses were to Dricus du Plessis, Sean Strickland, and Alex Pereira. He is on a 2-fight losing streak, with du Plessis and Strickland being those losses. Imavov is 3-1-1 in his last 5. His wins were over Brendan Allen, Jared Cannonier, and Roman Dolidze. His loss was to Sean Strickland, and his no contest was to was with Chris Curtis, but he was squarely winning that fight up until the point that Curtis ended up having to not be able to continue.
This one is going to be interesting because, and the only thing that I thought about right when I saw this fight is like, what can I say about Izzy? And the thing that I will say is it's unfortunate that Dricus du Plessis made it look so easy to climb on someone's back and choke them out. Because now I'm thinking like maybe Nasruddin will actually wrestle because he does have it in his back pocket. It is something that he can do. So I'm really hoping he does because of how easy Dricus made it look. I mean, it shouldn't be that tough of a task, even though I know Izzy's never been subbed until Dricus. Imavov is not in the better position to try to stand with Izzy. I just don't think that's going to be in his best benefit, even though, like I've said before, he does have quick hands when he gets inside the pocket. He's able to get out. But Izzy doesn't play the pocket. He stays on the outside, and he's going to pop in and pop out. It's not going to give time for Imavov to, pick his shots and get a quick flurry off on the inside because Izzy's just going to hit him with a 1-2 and back off. But it is going to be fun to see 5 rounds of this. Do I think it's going to go all 5? Probably, because Izzy's a fucking decision merchant, but we'll see.
Yeah, I honestly, I think that's a pretty accurate assessment of the whole situation here. Watching back the Chris Curtis fight, because I had gone back and said, I saw the no contest, and I was like needing to jog my memory as to what went down there. That was like a clash of heads. As I had said, Imavov was winning that one pretty squarely. But the one note that I did have from rewatching some of that was exactly what you had said, that he does have really decent striking when he's able to get it all off. But you were exactly right in your assessment. I mean, Izzy is, he'll snipe from the outside, circle out a whole lot. I mean, like, the wide stance situation. I mean, it's a lot going for Izzy when it comes to the striking. Imavov, if he wants to try to wrestle, is going to have to really commit to these takedowns. Like, I would hope that if, like, the problem with Izzy is that, like, the awkwardness of Dricus is really what sold all of that, because he was able to get him in a kind of an off motion that was set up to get him down, where a lot of these guys go for straightforward pressure, and Izzy just doesn't play that game. So it's like, it's a little bit hard to think that Imavov is going to be able to just back him down. Izzy does not get back down very easily. It took a really awkward, clunky du Plessis style takedown to make that effective. But, I mean, we got to really see. I think that the big, like, note of this fight is just that it's really going to show almost a similar note to the Sergey Pavlovich fight, in the sense that, like, we got to see if like the Izzy that we all knew when he was one of the most dominant champions in the history of this sport is still in that body. I mean, like, is he still that guy? Because, these 2 losses, the Strickland loss, you could have said was a fluke. I don't think it was, but I mean, you could have said that mentally he wasn't there. Whatever. The du Plessis loss really kind of washes that line of thinking out the window. So,
100%.
yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things. Like, this really is sort of make or break for Izzy as far as, like, him staying in the conversation. He's already been talking about how he just sort of wants to bring fun back to the division and that kind of, like, narrative. And I'm like,
He was never that fun, but
well, and regardless of even how you feel about that, just that line of thinking just sort of, like, gives me the impression that, like, he's sort of resigned to not being back to the belt. And if that's the mentality, which is, look, man, I mean, if there's something that has changed in you, I mean, he's only 35, but he is 35. So, it's that 34 is usually that cutoff. He is past that point. It's like, if he's sort of resigned to just being like, I'm going to be the fun guy, then that does not bode well for against a guy like Imavov, who is certainly trying to get that belt. I mean, Imavov is gunning for it. So
100%.
yeah, so this is a little bit of a tough one in that regard. I've got to kind of go with the Imavov. I mean, just for those reasons. I mean, I don't know if the Izzy of old is still there. I think that this is the perfect fight to see if it is, though, because if he cannot beat Imavov, then yeah, I mean, he's going to be one of those dudes that's going to hang out in the 7 to 10 range of the top 15.
Yeah, this one is going to be a good one to cap off the night. It's unfortunate that it is probably going to be a 5-round boring decision, but it is going to have some good implications after it. It's good to see that Izzy is the favorite. People still have hope in him, and I'm just really excited to see what's going.
Yeah, and who knows? I mean, perhaps if Adesanya is really coming out to be the fun guy, then make it fun. Go out there and get a finish. I mean, like prove your worth on the line. I mean, look, we all know the Izzy of previous years. And as I said, I mean, for being a decision merchant or boring or however you want to look at him, he was one of the most dominant champions we have ever seen in this sport. So you have to give the respect where it is due. And I am certainly no Izzy Glazer. I've had plenty of things to say about him, in a lot of different capacities. There's a whole lot of stuff about him outside of the cage that we don't need to get into, but he's a little bit weird. Regardless, go out there, make this fight entertaining on both sides. If Imavov can really pressure him, if he's able to cut him off and not let him circle out as much, that would be really nice to see. This should be a good fight for either of them if they are on their game in a way that makes sense for this fight specifically. Like, do what you need to do to get a decisive victory, because it sends either of them in the trajectory that they're going to be sitting in for a while afterwards.
100%.
So yeah, there you go. So, I mean, what your overall, who's your pick?
For this one, I'm going to have to go Izzy. I think the favorite, Vegas must know all, at least to a certain extent. And Imavov never really impressed me too much. So I'm going to go Izzy, man. I'm going to go Izzy.
I will just say, to that note, you have said that in the past, Peyton Talbot.
Yeah, true.
So anyway, but no, fine assessment on that. I'm going to go Imavov on this one. I think that, again, the hunger for the belt is going to be the thing that's going to propel him, and I just don't know if Izzy has it in him anymore. That's where my head is at with it. If Izzy wins, I'd be certainly very happy, but my gut's telling me Imavov.
I'm hearing you. Yeah, this will be a fun card, I think.
I think so too.
And it starts in the middle of the day. So.
I was gonna note that. Just for everybody who, especially if you're on the East Coast, be aware that the prelims of this card start at 9 o'clock in the morning. So this is a morning card for everybody. Going to have the evening off, so that's going to be nice. Every once in a while to be able to go out on a Saturday night. But just be ready for getting up early to watch these fights if you are going to be watching along. And you can watch along with both myself and Chase Parton individually. I do a watch along with the Vitz King. Hopefully Vitz King's sickness will be gone and we'll be watching together. That is at youtube.com/@YamaShow. to watch me and the Vitz King. And Chase, I know that you can tell them where they can find you.
They can certainly find me making predictions like this that is about to come out this week for this card. And that'll be on youtube.com/@CPSmalls. And of course, you can find me on Twitter, probably calling out Crazy Kev to a pit matchup in Karate Combat at Creative Parton, Partin. So hopefully I see you guys there on Saturday for another watch along.
You follow my boy Kev, sign the fucking contract, you puss. You can find me on Twitter saying things like that, and also on Instagram at YamaShow as well. We are on Kick, Twitch, and Trovo, in addition to YouTube for your streaming pleasure. There hopefully will be a video out this week on the channel. As I said, I'm going to try to get that GFL video going, so keep an eye on the YouTube channel for that. In the meantime, everybody, we will catch you in the next stream. Of course, this show is Monday night, so make sure you come back for next Monday. We will be breaking down each and every one of the fights we just did our predictions for. Till then, have a great rest of your week. And as always, everybody, fight on.
BKFC.